Right, what you say there is actually obviously very telling, because that's the part about coaching that a fan, again, they don't understand, because even their understanding of sports, they tend to just think the coach who wins is the best coach. Whereas, like, classically in sports, there'll always be some like amazing coaches. Like, obviously, if anyone knows English football, like Harry Redknapp was an example of this. Like, they coach like the lesser players, and they just get way more out of them than they should. Well, I can tell you right now, you don't do that by going in and thinking this is my perfect vision of football. Or all these players who aren't the best, you're all going to do all these things that you. That's the luxury of like a guy who's at like Real Madrid or something, mate. Like, if you work with players like that, some of it is like what you're saying, right? It's a negotiation. You got to figure out what can these guys do, what kind of. So what I want to ask essentially is kind of like what Kassad's vision of CS is, because people don't know, one of the areas, and this is actually how this show exists with me and Legia, is you can watch people in videos or you can watch them on camera, and you can maybe know a bit about what they know about CS. You can sort of try and figure out like how much of this is like for the camera. Does he really know what he's saying? Is he just saying it because he's like 30 seconds? Would he be able to explain it if he had longer? But if you have a conversation with someone, like a real conversation outside of that context, like over a beer or something, you have like 2 hours you could talk, you very quickly find out who knows CS, who has a mind for the game, and who was just, you know, like just fucking putting the crosshair on people and just hoping that they get a kill, right? So one of the reasons I know Kassad definitely knows the game is he's one of those guys, Legia, right? There's even some coaches in the game where they are just people, like, they're like the big brother of the team. They're just there to be like, you know, calming people down emotionally. There's the coaches that like can sort of like very, very lightly talk about the game, like, oh, you know, we lost a couple of like force buys or whatever, like, but if you ask Kassad something like, oh yeah, you're having a pretty good like T-side on train there, but like what was going on? He'll be like, well, in the 27th round, you know, like we kind of fucked up that like second flash, and then, you know, they pulled back and you're like, all right, mate, fucking hell, we're not watching the demo, but like that's the point. He's got a mind for it. Like, so what's the Kassad philosophy on CS roughly? Like, give us some big thoughts.
I don't know. The thing is, like, for me in this team, why this team was always like kind of good for me. I was never a fan of default-based CS. I know you need to have a strong default, you have a decent default, but for me, it's like understanding what kind of level are your players on, you know, in terms of like understanding the game sense or whatever, right? Because you cannot force somebody to go above their level of understanding of them. Just make sure and just accept that that's going to work, right? Because you have like a player that's sharp, right? You know, super sharp, and if you put him in a setup, if you then tell him like this is going to be the setup for this round, this setup is called that, and he's going to deliver you numbers, right? You cannot force him like to do like some crazy rotations and some crazy like, you know, game sense things, like for example for like Simple does and all these tier 1 players. You know, you need to understand the level of your like that your players are kind of, you know, on, and then work with that. For me, it's always, I always like strats and always like setups. I always like this kind of execution based CS rather than default based, and at the same time I always try to kind of connect the player's instinct, like allowing them to use their instincts in the game, right? If somebody tells me, listen, I think this guy is weak, can somebody flash for me, I'm just going to kill him, and we're just going to be like, that's fine, we can do it, right? But I also like to have like a lot of openers to the rounds, you know, like a starters that's going to get me my, for example, entry on Mirage. Like, let's say we're running a default with this opener on Mirage, right? And then I want to get some sort of pass smokes or flashes to get my entry into the ladder, right? And he's going to create some space for me to open up a 1v1 for my best player to do, right? And then I'm going to flash for my best player. He's going to get a 1v1. And because he's my best player, he's going to be better than the opposite player on that spot. He's going to get me the kill, right? But I'm going to set him up for that kill by not having a special full-on execute strat that you see on the stupid YouTube videos, right? With like a bunch of mollies and flashes and shit, right? You're going to have a good opener. You're going to have good entry smokes, your entry flashes that are going to put your aggressive player into a spot where he can maybe get a kill, right? But if he doesn't get a kill, he's going to get a space for you. You know, that's going to cause some rotations that you drew before the game started, right? And then you understand that, how CTs will react that, and then you set up your best player to either like open up that part of the map or close it out for you. It's just simple as that in my head.
Just quickly for the viewer, it's nice when you say the difference between like playing a default style and like a style what you say that you like to play like more settings, starters, executes, like just in general more things that you practice a lot. Just think how many more reps you guys have doing these rounds, and how much confidence you have, and know how good these rounds work compared to like when you play default and you always have to kind of adapt pretty much. When you play default, you just adapt. But you guys have so many reps in your rounds, and that's why I think it's fucking good. But it takes a long time. Like that's why I think also, like approaches like these take also longer time for a team like to to
Yeah.
actually connect and like get actually really strong. But once they connect, they're fucking dangerous. And even like many people say, they play very strategical style. We counter them. We can watch the demos. Even if you think you can watch the demos, just because this team reps this so much in practice, they're aware. They're ready. They will just destroy you because pre-aim reaction. They know how people react to that. And even if you anti that, you still have your
Exactly. It's a level of confidence as well.
Yes.
It's a level of confidence. If you did that play, you know that play is strong for you. You're confident in getting out and getting that duel, right? It is usual against the players that are on usual spots. They're not going to be on the fucking sky or under the ground shooting at you. They're going to be on usual spots, right? And then if you go out and you're confident, you're going to get that battle, and the round is going to end up the same.
Yes, and it's the same that we made, what you also said. What we made the mistake in Big with Smuya. We tried to put him in this high-level Counter-Strike that we had, I think. And he obviously was a very fucking individually good player, but he just couldn't fit in the system. And he struggled a lot, and that's why I think it's very good, the approach that you have.
Yeah, if a player has a limit with understanding the game, you just you just set him up where he's like what he's good in, good at, Just set him up like with his setups, with his like angles, with his battles that he's going to win for you, right? Don't put him in some crazy, like super complicated like shit that he's not going to understand. He's going to be second guessing himself. That's the first thing. And when you're like that player like starts second guessing himself, he's going to doing random things, and then there is like no chance for you to win the round or the game,